A wealthy businessman was swimming in a sky pool connecting two skyscrapers, unaware that death had already set its sights on him.
I'm exactly the right person.
The man had no idea why he had angered a programming genius with an IQ of 170. Not long ago, this programmer's wife had been killed in a brutal terrorist attack inside the CIA. However, powerful figures were covering up for the criminals. With no other choice, the unarmed programmer decided to use his intellect to avenge his wife. Charlie was a cryptographer for the CIA. Though introverted, he was truly a programming prodigy. He and his wife, Sarah, lived a happy life in their little home. One day, Sarah had to leave for a 5-day business trip to London. Even though Charlie hated being apart from her, he understood how important her work was. As her car pulled away, he playfully ran after it for a short distance, never realizing it would be the last time they saw each other. After seeing her off, Charlie drove to CIA headquarters. There, he happened to meet his friend, Agent Bear. Years ago, Charlie had once saved Bear's life, and from then on, the two men, despite their very different personalities, had become close friends. Charlie eventually swiped his badge to access the 5th basement level, home to the agency's cryptography and analysis division. Security officers closely monitored the hallways to prevent unauthorized items from being brought inside, but having worked there for years, Charlie was already used to these strict protocols. At his desk, he quickly settled into work. Before long, he received a message from someone using the codename Inquiline. They had communicated several times before. This time, however, the sender transferred 2.1 terabytes of data, classified information concerning Kabul, Afghanistan, spanning from 2014 to 2022. While trying to chat and lure out the sender's identity, Charlie realized the data contained highly classified CIA files. He wanted to investigate further, but the documents were encrypted and inaccessible. Just then, Sarah called, but Charlie was so absorbed in the classified files that he wasn't in the mood to talk. He told her he had urgent work and promised to call back later. Little did he know, this would be their last conversation. After hanging up, Charlie took his laptop to the data room, hoping to crack the files there. After experimenting for a while, he succeeded. The decrypted files revealed details of a drone strike operation. Cross-checking them against the CIA archives, he was horrified to find that many documents had been altered. Eyewitnesses reported a drone strike, but the U.S. confirmed it was a suicide bombing. The attack was massive, killing about 150 people, including French special forces and 7 Danish Marines. At first, it was reported as a mistaken airstrike. Later, however, the U.S. Department of Defense denied any American air operations in the region and shifted the blame to local insurgents. But now, from what Charlie uncovered, it was clear the U.S. had deliberately covered up the truth. The document bore the signature of none other than Deputy Director Moore. Shaken to his core, Charlie left the data room in a panic. That night, when he tried to call Sarah, her phone wouldn't connect. He assumed she was just busy and didn't think much of it. The next morning, as soon as Charlie arrived at the CIA, he saw Moore waiting for him. The deputy director told him to come along to the director's office. On the way, Charlie was nervous, fearing his actions from the night before had been discovered. But the truth was far worse. Director O'Brien delivered the devastating news. The previous day, a terrorist attack had taken place at a hotel in London. 2 hostages had been killed, and one of them was Sarah, Charlie's wife. The word struck Charlie like lightning. He instinctively refused to accept it, but then, the news broadcast displayed the crime scene, showing Sarah being taken hostage and executed. There was no way for Charlie to deny the reality any longer. Losing his wife devastated Charlie, but in order to avenge her, he forced himself to stand back up, determined to uncover the truth behind the attack. His request, however, was flatly rejected by Moore. The deputy claimed that the CIA was already devoting all its resources to hunting the terrorists. He even advised Charlie to take some time off to recover emotionally. Charlie returned to his empty home. At times, he felt as though Sarah was still there, but the crushing pain of loss soon overwhelmed him. The next day, at the airport, Charlie retrieved Sarah's belongings. Inside her suitcase, he discovered a neatly wrapped gift, his birthday present, carefully prepared by Sarah. Charlie broke down in tears. His wife had died so tragically, yet there was still no trace of the 4 terrorists. He refused to accept that outcome. Back at work, he quietly began his own investigation. Charlie accessed and recalibrated the hotel's surveillance cameras. The footage showed the 4 assailants driving a battered old car into the parking garage. They seemed to be dealing with someone, when suddenly a fight broke out. Gunfire erupted, alarms blared, and in panic, the attackers stormed the conference hall and took hostages. On the monitors, Sarah could be seen shielding a young girl behind her. It was this courageous act that made her the terrorists' main target. Using voice recognition software, Charlie matched audio recordings against the global intelligence database. He immediately identified one of them, Blazich, a notorious Belarusian criminal. Applying the same method, he identified the second man, Elish, a former African Special Forces operative who now trafficked weapons on the black market. Soon, armed police surrounded the hotel. The terrorists used hostages as human shields, demanding the police withdraw. To escalate their threat, they mercilessly executed Sarah in front of everyone. Though the shooter wore a mask, Charlie pieced together footage from multiple angles, applying facial recognition and gait analysis. He confirmed the killer was Schiller, a notorious mercenary who carried out assassinations for rogue military groups and unstable nations. The fourth assailant was Gretchen, a former Armenian agent currently hiding in Paris. Every day, she visited the same cafe to buy bread. But to Charlie's surprise, when he reported his findings to Moore and the others, they reacted with eerie calm, showing no shock at all. What we want is to dismantle the entire network. This network has nothing to do with Sarah, but it concerns national sovereignty and security. Instead of ordering arrests, Moore arranged for Charlie to attend therapy, insisting it would help him overcome his trauma and return to work. Charlie, however, had already made up his mind. If the agency wouldn't act, he would. The next day, he hid a tiny storage device inside his ID badge clip, bypassing headquarters security with ease. After all, much of the CIA's security system had been designed by him. He printed out all classified documents regarding the bombing campaign Moore had authorized, then used a specialized degausser to ensure no digital recovery was possible. The following day, Charlie stormed into Moore's office and slammed the incriminating files onto his desk. He warned Moore that if he didn't cooperate, the documents would automatically be released to every major news outlet at a scheduled time. Charlie's demand was clear. He wanted to be trained as an operative, given all intelligence on the four terrorists, so he could kill them with his own hands. Moore scoffed at the idea, a nearsighted programmer thinking he could become an assassin, but under direct threat, he had no choice but to agree. Once Charlie left, Moore and his colleagues quickly conferred. They decided to train him for now, while secretly searching for the hidden files. Once located, they would eliminate him. Soon after, Charlie was taken to a secret CIA training facility, where veteran instructor Henderson put him through a special program. Meanwhile, CIA search teams ransacked his office and home, but found nothing. Back to Charlie, even with Henderson's personal training, his shooting skills were abysmal. Unless he stood right next to the target, his bullets went astray. He had no chance of becoming a standard field agent. What Henderson didn't expect, however, was Charlie's genius with explosives. After only a few practice sessions, his speed and precision in assembling bombs already surpassed that of seasoned operatives. Over time, under Henderson's grueling training, Charlie, using the codename Clark, mastered many survival skills. At last, he completed the program, and Henderson even provided him with a forged passport. Meanwhile, the CIA finally uncovered a hidden disk after great effort, but when decrypted, it turned out to be empty. Charlie, with his IQ of 170, had toyed with them, sending the agency in circles. When Moore resolved to eliminate Charlie, he discovered the training base was deserted. Charlie had taken all his forged documents and bypassed the facility's pride, the biometric security system, with ease. Only then did Henderson realize he had underestimated his programmer-turned-student. Moore grew even more unsettled. How had Charlie managed to escape at just the right moment? Then he noticed the file Charlie had left behind. Inside the binder's clip was a tiny bugging device. By then, Charlie was already thousands of miles away. He ditched the tracker and boarded a plane to Paris. His first target, former agent Gretchen, he staked out the bakery she frequented, quickly tracing her residence. When Gretchen went out with a friend, Charlie used a lock-picking trick he had learned online to slip into her apartment. Searching the place, he found an itinerary, snapped a photo with his phone, and pocketed a handgun from the drawer. Just as he was about to leave, the alarm went off. Gretchen had returned early. Charlie hurried upstairs to hide, but with his enemy right in front of him, he couldn't pull the trigger. Panicked, he fled the apartment. Killing, however, didn't always require a gun. Charlie discovered Gretchen had a severe pollen allergy. The next day, he bought a bouquet, extracted the pollen, and refined it. A few days later, during her medical checkup, Charlie hacked into the clinic system to create a diversion, slipped in disguised as a doctor, and poured the pollen into her oxygen supply. In the sealed room, Gretchen began to suffocate. Charlie told her that if she revealed Schiller's location, he'd spare her life, but the former agent proved to be a skilled actress. As soon as he opened the door, she lunged at him. They wrestled fiercely, but Charlie was no match. Gretchen broke free and ran outside, only to be struck dead by a speeding car before Charlie could even fire. He grabbed her phone, rushed back to his hotel, packed his bags, and immediately left for Marseille, France. Gretchen's death quickly drew the CIA's attention. Moore lied to Director O'Brien, claiming the agency had no involvement. As for Charlie, despite his hatred, the experience of trying to kill for the first time left him shaken. At a crowded nightclub, he thought he glimpsed Sarah among the people, but it was only a hallucination. Then he spotted Henderson across the room. Unfortunately, this was no hallucination. Moore had sent him to finish the job. Charlie bolted from the club, sprinting through several streets before ducking into a small roadside bar. But Henderson's tracking skills were too sharp. Within moments, he had found him again. Charlie rushed into the restroom, but there were no windows, no vents, no way out. Resigned, he stepped back into the bar to find Henderson waiting at the counter. Charlie couldn't understand how he had been found so easily. Henderson explained coldly. The phone he'd taken from Gretchen was acting like a radar beacon. Then he added, "No matter how high your IQ is, it's useless. The moment you panic, your plan is doomed." Charlie praised Henderson for being a great teacher, then asked with a sly smile, "Do you remember which subject I was best at?" The moment he finished speaking, his phone timer hit 0, the restroom suddenly exploded, chaos erupted in the bar, and Charlie slipped away from Henderson's sight. He didn't dare return to his hotel, so he spent the night outdoors. At dawn, Charlie messaged the hacker Inquiline for help. She agreed to meet him. Charlie immediately flew to Istanbul, Turkey. Following her instructions, he went to a bookstore, where someone handed him a book. To his shock, the hacker he had corresponded with for 5 years was actually a young woman. Her husband, the original Inquiline, had been a CIA informant and a former KGB agent. After their marriage, he passed on all his skills to her. Not long after, Russian intelligence pushed him out of a window to his death. Since then, she had been on the run while taking over her husband's role, continuing contact with the CIA under his codename. She brought Charlie to a seaside safe house, her first time in 3 years staying anywhere longer than a month. There, she revealed what she had uncovered about the 4 terrorists. Charlie shared his own intel. Schiller was the ringleader, a middleman in the operations. With Inquiline's data, Charlie realized Schiller was also the recruiter for Moore's covert activities. Blazich, the Belarusian criminal, though based in Moscow, lived a lavish life traveling the world, always choosing first-class service. He might be the easiest to target. On Blazich's social media, Charlie spotted a selfie in a vineyard. The spacing of the vines suggested a hot climate, with rows planted north to south. The sun's angle matched. After digitally enhancing the blurred structures in the background, the architecture was unmistakably Spanish. Even more telling, a faint reflection in the glass window revealed Blazich's new girlfriend, a model. Inquiline enhanced the image and matched her to social media posts showing she had flown from Moscow to Madrid just a week earlier. Meanwhile, Director O'Brien began suspecting Moore, but when she confronted him, Moore arrogantly replied that her predecessor had once said the exact same words at that very table, yet he had still come out on top. He warned her to stay out of his business. But O'Brien wasn't about to let it go. She discreetly dispatched a trusted agent to shadow Henderson. On the other side, Charlie and Inquiline tracked Blazich through surveillance. He and his girlfriend were staying at Madrid's most luxurious 5-star hotel. Each night, he reserved the entire sky pool suspended between 2 towers for himself. Charlie asked Inquiline to monitor Henderson while he flew to Madrid. At the hotel, he confirmed Blazich's habit of late-night swimming. Using his hacking skills, Charlie easily obtained the pool's architectural schematics. The next day, he gathered the necessary materials and built a sophisticated electromagnetic device. That night, Charlie returned to the hotel. While watching Blazich, he noticed someone else watching him. Inquiline checked the feed and confirmed it was a CIA agent. Worse, Henderson himself was also in the hotel. She urged Charlie to abandon the mission and retreat immediately. But Charlie refused to waste such a chance. He entered the rooftop pool area. Blazich, spotting him, assumed he was just a lost tourist. When Charlie asked where Schiller was, Blazich's expression darkened. Charlie raised the remote control, explaining that with one press, the device would release the air between the glass layers, shattering the pool. Terrified, Blazich swam frantically toward the other side, but as he reached the center, the glass beneath him cracked apart. Tons of water and shards of glass crashed down below. Just then, Inquiline screamed through Charlie's earpiece. Henderson was on his way up. Charlie bolted for the exit, only to find Henderson chasing him into the stairwell. Moments later, Inquiline warned that yet another CIA operative was searching the hotel for him. As Henderson closed in on Charlie, another CIA agent suddenly lunged forward, knocking him down. In the basement laundry room, the 2 men fought brutally, while Charlie cowered at the doorway, watching in fear. Henderson slammed his opponent's head into a spinning washer, but was shot in the stomach. Acting fast, he wrestled the gun away and killed the man. When Henderson and Charlie locked eyes, Henderson dropped the gun, letting Charlie slip away. At CIA headquarters, Director O'Brien summoned Moore and demanded to know Charlie's whereabouts. Moore lied, claiming Charlie was on leave, but O'Brien didn't buy it. She had already traced him to a Madrid hotel. Meanwhile, Moore's subordinates suspected someone was speaking to Charlie via Bluetooth. Digging deeper, they uncovered chat records where Charlie had guessed his contact lived in Istanbul and used the codename Inquiline. From this lead, they quickly pieced together Inquiline's identity and discovered she had taken over her late husband's work. Moore immediately alerted the Russian KGB branch in Istanbul. Unaware of this, Charlie returned to Inquiline's safe house. There, she confided in him, recognizing that he too had lost his partner. After her husband's death, she said, the world had gone silent, the everyday sounds of life had vanished, leaving only endless emptiness. You're doing all of this. Is it to fill the silence in your heart? That night, pheasants kept as alarms shrieked wildly. Russian operatives stormed the property. The two fled through an emergency escape route that Inquiline had prepared in advance, but as the pursuit grew tighter, a bullet tore through the glass and struck her. Charlie swapped seats and drove furiously into the night. He managed to escape, but Inquiline was dead. With Sarah's killers still at large, Charlie refused to collapse into grief again. Taking Inquiline's phone, he posed as an arms dealer to arrange a meeting with Elish. He scoured the markets for bomb components. Once prepared, he traveled non-stop to an abandoned warehouse in Constanța, Romania, the agreed meeting spot. Using digital trickery, he superimposed his face onto a passerby in another country, throwing CIA surveillance off his trail. Soon, Elish and his men arrived. On a chair sat only a phone. Through it, Charlie directed Elish to open a box, triggering a motion-sensitive directional bomb. If Elish moved or closed the lid, it would detonate. Seeing the danger, his men bolted. Charlie stepped forward and demanded, "Where is Schiller now?" Elish had no choice but to confess. Since Gretchen and Blazic's deaths, Schiller had gone into deep hiding, living aboard a freighter off the Russian coast. The only way to reach him was through a cafe at Primorsk port on the Baltic Sea. Charlie took Elish's phone but didn't free him as promised. He left him there. Moments later, Elish was blown apart. Meanwhile, Moore realized he'd been fooled again. Charlie wasn't in Rome, he was spotted on a bus in Romania. Charlie pressed on, eventually reaching Primorsk, Russia, where he checked into a small inn. The next morning, he scouted the harbor, but before long, locals began to eye him suspiciously. Forced to retreat, Charlie was stopped by someone, Bear. Bear warmly pulled him into a cafe. Charlie asked bluntly, "Did you come here to kill me?" But Bear shook his head, saying he was here to help. Charlie had already killed 3 men. Even if he managed to kill Schiller, how would he ever escape Russia? Those forces wouldn't let him go. If Charlie left with Bear now, he could guarantee his safety. Bear had come alone, seeking only to repay the life debt Charlie had saved him from years ago. But Charlie was resolute. Until Schiller was dead, he would never give up. Seeing his determination, Bear didn't press the matter further. After parting ways with Bear, Charlie set his sights on Schiller's contacts. He discovered a supply boat docking at the pier, belonging to a Russian freighter. Studying sea charts, Charlie confirmed that Schiller was hiding on that ship. The next morning, while tracking the boat, Charlie was knocked unconscious. When he came to, he was aboard the freighter in international waters. At last, he faced Schiller, the man who killed his wife. After hearing Charlie's story, Schiller coldly admitted Sarah was nothing more than a tactical choice, someone who had to die so he could walk free. "You're just like me. You killed so many people just to find me." Analyzing Charlie's previous kills, Schiller pointed out that Charlie had never pulled the trigger himself, always relying on elaborate traps that gave his victims a chance to escape, allowing him to pretend his hands weren't truly bloodstained. Seeing Charlie's silence, Schiller handed him a pistol and even knelt down, mimicking Sarah's final moments, daring him to shoot. Charlie aimed at him for a long while, making Schiller uneasy. Finally, Charlie confessed he couldn't pull the trigger. He only wanted Schiller to taste the same despair Sarah had felt. At that moment, the ship veered off course into Finnish waters. It turned out Charlie had planned this all along. He had hacked the vessel's navigation system and alerted the Finnish Navy and Interpol to its location. Soon, Finnish patrol ships closed in, and Interpol helicopters circled above. Schiller and his men had no way out. Days later, a press conference was held at CIA headquarters. O'Brien announced that the drone strikes Moore had authorized had violated international law. He and his accomplices would face a military tribunal. The hidden civilian casualty numbers were finally revealed. Charlie was declared innocent and reinstated at the agency. Charlie then visited Sarah's grave. As he returned to the parking lot, Henderson suddenly appeared in the passenger seat, his eyes filled with respect. He told Charlie he had done far better than expected, and with that, the story came to an end. Charlie had started as nothing more than a technician who didn't even know how to fire a gun, but the brutal death of his wife forced him onto a path of vengeance. His way of fighting back was unique, not brute force, but intellect. Yet after every mission, he was haunted by visions of Sarah. This psychological torment made him less of a traditional action hero and more of an ordinary man swept up by fate. His bond with Inquiline marked a turning point. Both had lost their partners to intelligence agencies, becoming each other's support. That connection gave Charlie's revenge a deeper weight. It was no longer just personal, but also for a fallen ally. The film also explores a profound moral dilemma. When the law fails to deliver justice, does one have the right to answer violence with violence? It doesn't offer a simple answer. Instead, through Charlie's journey, the audience is left to reflect. His use of illegal tactics brought him closer to the truth, but also deeper into moral uncertainty. He began to question whether what he was doing was truly right. This inner struggle is portrayed with nuance and authenticity, allowing viewers to feel his pain and conflict. Overall, The Amateur is not your typical slick spy thriller. Charlie isn't a flawless 007. Every step he takes is fraught with mistakes and hardship, but that imperfection is what makes the story real. When an ordinary man is pulled into a vast conspiracy, he cannot change fate, he can only cling to his humanity, and that's why Charlie didn't kill Schiller in the end. He chose to let the law and international justice decide, preserving the last shred of dignity on his path of revenge. And that wraps up today's movie. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.